What is going on, everyone? Jagan here, and One Piece chapter 990 was pretty interesting. A lot of moving parts. We've been getting a little bit of everyone for the most part lately, a lot of setup, and I'm sure as we get more into those main fights, which could be coming very, very soon, that we'll start to get more focused chapters. But overall, this chapter was pretty satisfying to me. A lot went down, a little more insight into some people's character motivations, a couple hints about some fights. But before we dive into the specifics, I'd really appreciate it if you guys would consider subbing to the channel for regular One Piece, Ippo, and other manga-related videos. It would be very much appreciated, and I'm excited to see where this channel can go by the end of 2020. But without further ado, let's get this rolling. The chapter begins with Sasaki, who we haven't seen in a long-ass time because obviously he was chained down by Kiroshiro/Denjiro in one of the earlier chapters in Onigashima. But it's interesting because Big Mom is actually the reason that he got freed from those chains. And Oda keeps using like Fodder's or other characters' words to hype up Big Mom's strength. He keeps portraying her on the same level as Kaido. He's done that throughout the whole arc, but it's funny because he keeps clowning her in actual combat situations, yet the statements are completely different. So I don't think we should be taking these Big Mom memes very seriously when it comes to overall power scaling. It's not that big of a deal, but at the end of the day, she's a monster. It's going to take a hell of a lot to take her down, and it's really nothing more than that. But anyway, Sasaki talks about how he doesn't really care much about the Kozuki clan's history. He doesn't really care that Kiroshiro is fighting for that cause. It's more so the fact that he was betrayed by someone who he considered a buddy or a friend. I don't know if they were drinking buddies or whatever, but Sasaki is clearly bothered by this, so I don't know if that indicates we're going to get a Kiroshiro and Sasaki clash at some point. I don't know if Oda just wants to fully showcase the Scabbard's abilities when it comes to the Kaido fight, or if he's going to branch them off into individual one-on-ones when other people like the Supernovas maybe get there, but you know, there's a lot of options Oda can go here. So we head back to the rooftop where we have Kaido just staring down the Scabbards, and then we have the Minks fighting against Jack, and Jack is kind of just working them. Like, you can tell he's taking a beating, but it's just further emphasizing the durability of these ancient Zoans, how much punishment these guys can take. Because that's a lot of Sulong Minks he's fighting, and those aren't just fodder Minks, those are musketeers, those are some guardians, and it's funny because Kaido's not even fighting yet, he's kind of just chilling there like he's Shenron about to grant their wish or some shit. Same thing with the Scabbards, they're kind of just observing the situation at hand, and you actually see Kinemon look like he's about to make a move, but then Neko and Inu jump in front of him saying, "Now we got this, King." And they're obviously in their Sulong forms looking like they're about to do some work, but Oda of course has to hide the design for us for one more week for some reason. But it is interesting because last week, we had the Guardians and the Musketeers say that they would handle Jack for them and that they should focus on Kaido, but I'm getting the feeling that Inu Neko might just jump Jack next chapter because what they're observing right now is all of their comrades getting their asses whooped. So maybe we actually do get the Ino and Neko rematch against Jack and maybe they 2v1 him, but I don't know, it just feels kind of weird to me because I've always considered Calamity fights to be one-on-ones or that they should be one-on-ones. But you can't deny that there is a narrative here for both of these Minks to fight Jack, so whatever route Oda decides to go, I'll probably be fine with, but it really seems like the Minks should be able to overpower Jack pretty easily in these Sulong forms given the boost and what we've seen this form can do. But then again, Jack may have the durability to even outlast Inuarashi and Nekomamushi Sulong forms as well, so it could be a situation where they do 2v1 him, they do have the overwhelming advantage, but then someone else comes in later for the 1v1, who knows? All I really know is I'm ready for this action to get started. So heading back to the stage, we see Queen, who's all surprised that the samurai from the Udon prison are somehow here, specifically pointing out Hyogura. And Keen is kind of making fun of his competency because that's what he does, man. The Beast Pirates for real have zero chill amongst each other, man. Like, if you fail a mission, if you're incompetent, they're going to call you out and talk shit. That's just how they roll. And Keen has been probably the most competent, obviously being the first commander. That's kind of necessary for the portrayal. And he showcases his leadership even further during this chapter. You see him call up the Toby Roppo, start to give orders, telling them that there's no more challenge, there's no more opportunity for a Calamity match. That obviously due to the circumstances at hand, that they're going to have to give everything they got in protecting the roof, making sure nobody gets to Kaido, and that is really some Vice Captain energy right there. It's very similar to the circumstances on Whole Cake Island with the wedding. You basically had the Big One Pirates in total shambles over the Straw Hats' infiltration of the wedding, and Katakuri was the one who was being calm and collected, giving orders, making sure everybody knew what they were doing. He even was handing out those like mochi earplugs because he knew Big Mom was going to scream again. So it's really cool to see Keen act this way in a time of adversity where their captain is not present, where Keen has to take over, give orders, and make sure things get done. I'm still predicting the same matchups for the most part. It's likely going to be Zoro versus Keen. It will probably be Sanji against Queen unless he has some other plans in store for him. Because at this point, matchups are kind of hard to predict since Oda's using a lot of altercations. It's a very fast-paced war. A lot of people are running into each other, clashes, so we still might get a lot of random encounters and clashes before we get the definitive 1v1s. So now we shift to a scene with Hawkins and Drake, and I guess this confirms that Drake was in fact the one who was hiding there with Law, and he likely put Hawkins back together, which I'll elaborate on in just a second. Hawkins then looks at his cards and says that the probability of a certain man living until tomorrow morning is 1%. And the most likely candidate for this that people have been saying is Law, but I kind of think it's Drake. I think Luffy is too underwhelming and too obvious given his plot armor, and the situation that Drake is in kind of makes it believable. We actually see Who's Who convince Drake to follow him and basically join in on his quest to kill a Calamity, which he says is Queen. But of course we later learn that this is a setup. Drake got set up by Who's Who and Queen. Queen somehow found out that Drake is an informant. Somebody saw Drake free Trafalgar Law in the capital. And that's where people are getting the idea that Law is the man that Hawkins said had a 1% chance of surviving. I guess kind of intertwining those events. Maybe Drake freeing Law is what led to this 1% probability. And of course the likelihood of it being Drake himself, because now he wants to participate in the battle against Kaido. So that would definitely make sense. Like I said, I don't want it to be someone super obvious like Luffy, Zoro, or a main character like that. That would just be kind of pointless and underwhelming. I hope it's somebody that is actually believable to die, that we get that 1% for. We also see Hawkins messing with his cards while Drake is talking to Who's Who. So I don't know if he's like adding on to this existing prediction. I don't know if that is changing the percentage, or maybe he's making another important prediction that we're going to learn about soon. Hopefully if it's shown, it's something cool, like which side has the best chance of victory, because we all know that Hawkins is he'll likely only jump to our side if the percentages favor our alliance, right? He's an opportunist, he jumps at the winning team. Kind of like Scratchman Apu, he's always going to go on the winning team. Speaking of which, we have not seen this guy in forever. I have no idea where he is. Hopefully he joins the Kaido fight, because that would just be hilarious. I would love to see kids' reaction to Scratchman Apu just switching sides in the heat of battle, randomly joining their side, like, yeah, I'll fight with you guys, it's cool. Heading back down to the live stage, we see a lot of the samurai fighting against the gifters, we see a lot of the ninja fighting, and then we see Fukurokuju and Hote chilling together, and Fukurokuju starts walking off to the side. And I know this is giving a lot of people ideas like, oh, Orochi, here comes the Orochi revival. And I mean, I guess it is possible. A lot of people thought that there was a lot of unfinished plot lines that have to do with Orochi. The problem now is that he is not a major threat as an antagonistic force. So I don't see there being any significant fights when it comes to Orochi. But if he is somehow alive, I could definitely see him being executed publicly at the end of the arc, preferably by Ame no Habakiri, you know, the Snake Slayer of Heaven, obviously. Yamato no Orochi gets slain by Susanoo, so maybe that could be Momonosuke. That would be very poetic. But then again, I could also see Orochi staying dead, because in order to bring him back, it would have to be executed very, very good. And given the circumstances, I think that's kind of hard to do. Because one, if he's not dead due to some secret powers of his mythical Zoan, it makes Kaido look kind of stupid for being with this guy for 20 years and not knowing his abilities. Unless you want to say Orochi didn't know the abilities himself and it just activated, I guess that's fair. But I think it's highly unlikely and very difficult to execute. It would also be weird if King and Queen are just standing on the stage for a prolonged period of time and they didn't notice anything weird about his body. I think that would make them look a little incompetent there. So if he does bring him back to life, I really hope it's executed the best way possible. Further down, we see the Straw Hats have an encounter with a couple of the numbers. Zoro slices the mace off one of them, and then Jinbei blocks the mace for the other, both allowing Luffy to move forward, to which he comments on the size of those things and compares them to oars in Thriller Bark, and how something like that used to take the entirety of the crew to defeat, but now casually, individually, the Straw Hats can take one. And before Luffy's about to take out one of the numbers, we switch back to the Drake, Queen, and Who's Who plotline, and we find out that Who's Who didn't want to kill Queen at all. In fact, he was just setting up Drake. Queen and Who's Who both wanted to kill Drake. And given Drake's position, it makes a lot of sense that Oda would set something up like this, where somebody catches the informant and then do something about it. But Oda did a good job of subverting our expectations here, because he kept on emphasizing how Queen and Who's Who both wanted to kill someone, therefore potentially creating a connection there or a fight there. But I do like the way he handled this one and basically made it Drake's gateway to join the alliance. And my initial thoughts were it was kind of a weird characteristic for Who's Who to really care about there being a snitch in the organization, because him and Sasaki were both introduced as somebody who's very ambitious, wanting to move up in the crew, and also isolated from the crew a bit. Like, they don't really care for each other. They're just here because Kaido forced them to join, right? He breaks people's spirits and they join the crew. So making the most of the situation and trying to obtain those all-star spots definitely makes sense for those guys. But you wouldn't think he would care that much about what Drake does, but I guess in this situation he did. And now that Queen and Who's Who are in the room together and it's kind of confirmed that that their main goals aren't to kill each other, I think it's time to bring up the idea of a possible Kid and Killer versus Queen and Who's Who, because those are both matchups that people have suggested for them individually, and Kid and Killer are characters we have not seen in a long time now. They haven't gotten screen time, so maybe they come through those doors somehow and fight those guys 2-on-2. I don't know. I'm just throwing matchups out there at this point because there's a lot of altercations, like I said, a lot of moving parts, and it's kind of unpredictable at this point. A lot of things can happen, and based on how characters have kind of been teleporting, I really would not be surprised if Kid and Killer pop up very soon. And of course, the chapter ends with Drake taking out the number and Luffy taking out the number simultaneously, and Drake's attack is dope. He uses a move called Excalibur, utilizing his sword and battle axe. And while he's doing this, he's thinking back to Kobe and how Kobe told him that Luffy is a very trustworthy guy. So I guess Luffy is his ray of hope in this kind of desperate situation, and this is how Drake joins the alliance. A lot of people predicted it. I would say most people definitely thought that Drake would be a participant in the Kaido fight. I know some also thought that he would kind of just observe from the side, maybe report information and just do other sword related activities, but no, at this point Drake is definitely going to fight Kaido. Like, that is very, very obvious. Most of the supernova likely are. So yeah, that's pretty much the chapter. Some of the things I want to see in 991 in 2 weeks, because we're on break next week, is 1, Big Mom coming back. I need Big Mom to come back strong. I need her to not get memed. I need her to be a threat and imposing force. And then the second thing I'm looking forward to is seeing Marco come back, and then of course Kid and Killer and Law. I just want to see all the characters that we haven't seen for the last couple of chapters. I want to see what Oda does with them. Hopefully putting everybody in the right place of action. Whatever matchups he has in mind, I just want to see him get to it already. I'm ready for war, man. I'm ready for fights. The meathead in me is definitely craving for some action right now, so hopefully Oda delivers for us. But that is going to be all for me for my chapter 990 review. I appreciate all you guys who watched this. I would also appreciate it if you guys would subscribe, comment, give me your thoughts on the chapter, and maybe give me your thoughts on what kind of videos you'd like to see in the future. I'm Jagon, and I'll catch you guys next time.